The grain dust made Sari's feathers itch, but she had learned long ago not to scratch. The Drenna guards watched for any movement that was not work, any pause, any moment of rest. She kept her hands moving through the sorter, separating good grain from bad, hour after hour until her fingers bled. Around her, dozens of other Rethani worked in silence. They had learned silence too. Words invited attention. Attention invited pain. A shot prod crackled somewhere behind her. Someone had moved too slowly. The wet sound of a body hitting the floor followed, then the drag of claws as guards pulled the worker away. No one looked. Looking invited attention too. Sari was 19 cycles old. She had been born in this facility. Her mother had died here when Sari was 6, worked until her heart simply stopped. Her father had been taken to the mines in District 4 when she was 12. She never saw him again. This was life. This was all life had ever been. When the evening horn sounded, the workers shuffled toward the barracks. Sari collected her ration, a small bowl of grain paste and a cup of recycled water, and made her way to the far corner where Elder Kavith lay on his thin mat. He was dying. Everyone knew it. The Drennick did not waste medicine on old workers. They simply waited for nature to finish what labor had started. "Little one," Kavith whispered as Sari sat beside him. His voice was barely a breath now. "You came. I always come, grandfather." She helped him sit up and fed him small spoonfuls of her own ration. He tried to refuse, but she insisted. She could work hungry. He could not. "Sing me the old song," she asked quietly. "The one about the stars." Kavith's eyes darted to the doorway. The song was forbidden. All the old songs were forbidden. The Drennick had burned every record of Rethani culture they could find. They wanted slaves without history, without identity, without hope. But Kavith remembered. In a voice so soft it barely reached Sari's ears, he sang. The words spoke of beings who walked between stars, who came from distant worlds to bring light to dark places. It spoke of rescue and freedom and a future worth living. When he finished, Sari asked the question she always asked. "Do you believe it, grandfather? Do you believe someone will come?" Kavith was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his words were heavy with decades of suffering. "Hope died first, little one, long before we did. I sing the song because it is beautiful, not because it is true." Seti no dead. She had expected this answer. It was the same answer everyone gave. Later, after Kavith slept, a young male named Pol approached her. He was her age, strong, a good worker. The Drennick had already marked him for breeding purposes. "You waste your time with that broken old bird," Pol said. "He fills your head with dangerous dreams. He fills my head with songs." Same thing. Pol sits beside her. Listen, Seti. The only truth is survival. Keep your head down. Meet quota. Maybe die of old age if the gods are kind. That is all we have. That is all we will ever have. Sari did not argue. She had heard these words her entire life. From workers, from parents, from everyone who had survived long enough to pass on their wisdom. After Pol left, she waited until the barracks grew quiet with sleep. Then she did something forbidden. She climbed. The barracks had a damaged section of roof where the metal had warped from age. Sari had discovered it as a child. She had widened the gap over years, careful and slow. Now she could slip through and sit on the roof under the stars. The guards rarely looked up. Why would they? Where does slave go? Sari looked at the sky. Sovon 3 had 3 moons, and they hung like pale eyes watching over a broken world. Beyond them, the stars spread across the darkness in patterns the Drennick had never bothered to teach them. She whispered the forbidden hymn to herself. The words felt foolish on her tongue. Childish. Dangerous. She did not believe anyone was coming. She was not stupid. The Drennick had ruled this world for 3 generations. The galaxy did not care about the Rethani. No one cared about the Rethani. But she could not stop looking up. Somewhere in her chest, in a place she kept hidden from everyone, including herself, a tiny flame still burned. It was not hope exactly. It was smaller than that. Quieter. Just a refusal to let the darkness win completely. She stayed on the roof until her body grew cold, then climbed back down and curled up on her mat next to her grandfather. Above the planet, far beyond the reach of Drennick sensors, 12 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They were human vessels, angular and practical, built for war. On the bridge of the lead ship, Lieutenant Colonel Diana Reyes studied the reconnaissance data on her screen. 14 processing districts, an estimated 200,000 Red Hani slaves, 8,000 Drenic soldiers. The Galactic Covenant had known about this for decades. They had done nothing. Humanity had only learned about it 6 months ago. They had immediately begun planning. "Colonel," her communications officer said, "we are in position." Reyes looked at the planet below. Somewhere down there, people were suffering. People who had never known anything but chains. "Begin drop prep," she said quietly. "We go in 12 hours." In the barracks far below, Sari slept and dreamed of falling stars. Sari noticed the guards first. She was at her station in the processing facility when she saw 2 Drenic soldiers sprint past the windows. Then 3 more. Then a dozen. They moved toward the communication center with a panic she had never seen in them before. The Drenic did not panic. They were conquerors. They were strong. They feared nothing. So why were they running? An alarm began to wail. It was not the work alarm, or the curfew alarm, or the punishment alarm. Sari had never heard this sound before. It was high and shrill and continuous, and it made the guards move even faster. "What is happening?" whispered the worker beside her. Sari did not answer. She did not know. In the command center, Warden Grask received the reports with growing disbelief. Ships in orbit, unknown configuration, not responding to hails, and they were launching objects toward the surface. Thousands of objects, small, fast, falling like rain. "Identify them," Grask demanded. "Working on it, Warden. The translation systems are struggling. The language is new." Then the message came through. It was broadcast on every frequency, impossible to ignore. "This is the 44th Orbital Drop Battalion of the United Earth Military Command. You are in violation of Covenant Resolution 7 Alpha regarding sapient rights. All Drenic forces will surrender immediately or face removal." Grask laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound. "Humans, the newcomers? The deathworlders barely out of their own solar system." He turned to his officers. "Ignore them. Begin lockdown. The slaves are valuable. We will use them as shields if these primitives are foolish enough to attack." The officers moved to obey. In the processing facilities, workers were herded into central areas. Guards took up positions around them, weapons ready. Sari found herself pushed into a crowd of frightened Red Hani. Children cried. Adults tried to comfort them with lies they did not believe. Then the sky caught fire. Through the high windows of the facility, Sari saw it. Streaks of flame tearing through the atmosphere. Hundreds of them. Thousands. They came from every direction, falling toward the ground like a burning rain. The Drenic anti-air batteries opened fire. She could hear the thunder of their guns, could see the flashes of light as they tried to shoot down the falling objects. But there were too many. Far too many. The first impact shook the earth. The sound was like nothing Sari had ever heard. Not thunder. Not the rumble of heavy machinery. Something deeper. Something that vibrated in her bones and made her hearts beat faster. More impacts. Closer now. The windows rattled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then silence. A Drenic guard near Sari raised his weapon. "Stay down, animals. Anyone who moves dies." The workers obeyed. They always obeyed. Obedience was survival. Gunfire erupted outside. Not the heavy boom of Drenic weapons, but something sharper, faster. Screams followed. Drenic screams. Sari had heard Red Hani scream many times. She had never heard a Drenic scream before. The door to the facility exploded inward. Figures poured through the opening. They were tall, taller than the Red Hani, though not as tall as the Drenic. They wore armor that covered their entire bodies, dark and angular, with helmets that hid their faces. They moved with terrifying speed and precision, weapons firing in controlled bursts. The Drenic guards tried to fight back. It did not matter. The armored figures cut them down in seconds. Sari watched one of the guards, the same one who had beaten 3 workers to death last month, raise his weapon toward the huddled slaves. If he could not use them as shields, he would deny them to the enemy. A single shot rang out. The guard fell. A hole burned clean through his skull. In the doorway stood one of the armored figures, weapons still raised. The figure lowered the weapon slowly, then touched something on the side of its helmet. A voice emerged from external speakers. The words were in Rethani, broken and accented, but understandable. Stay down. We hear help. Safe now. Stay down. The figure moved past them, joining the others in clearing the facility. More armored soldiers entered, spreading through the building. The sounds of combat echoed from other areas. Gunfire, explosions, the screams of dying Drennick. It was over in minutes. The silence that followed was unlike any silence Sari had ever known. It was not the silence of fear or exhaustion or defeat. It was something else, something new. One of the armored figures returned to the group of huddled workers. This one moved differently than the others. Slower, more carefully. It reached up and removed its helmet. Beneath was a face Sari did not recognize. Soft skin without scales or feathers. Small, flat features. Dark eyes that swept across the crowd of terrified Rethani. The creature, the human, spoke into a device on its wrist. The device translated its words into Rethani. I am Sergeant Yusuf Okonkwo of the United Earth Military Command. The Drennick occupation of this world is over. You are free. No one moved. No one spoke. The words did not make sense. Freedom was a myth. Liberation was a fairy tale for children. The human seemed to understand. Its expression shifted into something Sari did not have a word for. Something sad and kind at the same time. I know you don't believe me, the human said. I wouldn't believe me either. But it's true. And we're not leaving until every last one of you is safe. Outside, the sky still burned with falling stars. More humans arriving. More liberators. Sari looked at the dead Drennick guards. At the armed humans standing over them. At the children who had stopped crying, staring at their rescuers with wide, confused eyes. For the first time in her life, she did not know what to believe. The battle for District 7 lasted 4 hours. Sari spent most of it huddled with the other workers in the processing facility, listening to the sounds of war outside. But war was not what she expected. She expected chaos. Destruction. The kind of mindless violence the Drennick used when they conquered. Instead, she heard orders. Communication. Coordination. The humans moved through the district like water through stone, flowing around obstacles, finding every gap, never stopping but never wasting movement either. And they were careful. At one point, a group of Drennick soldiers barricaded themselves in a storage building with a dozen Rethani workers as hostages. Sari expected the humans to attack anyway. The lives of slaves meant nothing. Everyone knew that. But the humans did not attack. Instead, they waited. They talked. One of them, a large male with dark skin, circled around to a ventilation shaft. He was gone for 20 minutes. Then there was a single burst of gunfire, and the storage building went quiet. When the doors opened, all 12 Rethani workers walked out unharmed. The Drennick inside were dead. Every one of them. The human had killed them with precision Sari did not know was possible. Not a single hostage touched. Later, she saw a young human female separated from her unit during the fighting. The female stumbled into the barracks where dozens of terrified Rethani had taken shelter. The workers backed away. Humans were warriors. Warriors hurt people. This was simple truth. But the female stopped. She raised her hands slowly, showing they were empty. Then she reached up and removed her helmet. Her face was strange, soft, young. Her hair was the color of grain before harvest. Her eyes were blue like the sky Sari sometimes saw through the facility windows. Safe, the female said in broken Rethani. You safe. Fighting almost done. Stay here. Stay safe. She sat down against the wall, making herself small, less threatening. She smiled at the children who peeked at her from behind their parents. Sari watched her pull a small object from her belt, a ration bar of some kind. She broke it into pieces and offered them to the nearest children. The parents hesitated, but the children were hungry. They always were. The female stayed with them until other humans came. She never raised her weapon, never threatened, never demanded. She just sat and waited and shared her food with hungry children. Sari did not understand. When the fighting ended, the humans brought Colonel Reyes to District 7. She was not what Sari expected either. Not tall or muscular or covered in weapons. She was small for a human, with gray in her hair and lines around her eyes. She moved through the district slowly, looking at everything. The processing equipment, the barracks, the scars on the workers' backs. They brought Warden Grask to her in chains. He had survived the battle by hiding in a reinforced bunker beneath the command center. The humans had dug him out like a worm from soil. Colonel Reyes, Grask said, his translation device turning his growls into words. I am prepared to negotiate. I have information about other Drenic installations, troop movements, command codes. All of it can be yours in exchange for my safety. Reyes looked at him for a long moment. Then she asked a question that made no sense to Grask. How many Redhani died in this district under your command? Grask tilted his head. What does that matter? Answer the question. I don't know. Thousands? We didn't keep count of livestock. Reyes nodded slowly. Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes went cold in a way Sari recognized. She had seen that look in workers who had lost everything, who had nothing left to lose. Sergeant Okonkwo, Reyes said quietly. The big human stepped forward. Colonel, handle this. Okonkwo nodded. He took Grass by the arm and led him away. A few minutes later, there was a single gunshot. No trial. No negotiation. Just justice. The humans spent the next several hours setting up medical stations, distributing food and water, treating the wounded. They worked without rest, without complaint. They treated the Redhani not as slaves or animals, but as people. Sari helped where she could. She carried supplies. She translated for humans whose devices struggled with the local dialect. She watched everything, trying to understand. As evening fell, she found Elder Cavith being carried out of the barracks by 2 human medics. He was alive. Barely. They were taking him to the medical station. Grandfather. Sari rushed to his side. Cavith's eyes were wet. His whole body trembled. Not with pain or fear, but with something else. They came, he whispered. The Starwalkers. They came. He began to sing. The forbidden hymn. But his voice was not soft now. It was loud. Loud enough for others to hear. And others joined him. Across District 7, elderly Redhani who remembered the old songs began to sing. Voices that had been silent for decades rose into the evening air. The sound spread from building to building, from street to street, until the whole district echoed with music that had been forbidden for 3 generations. The human soldiers stopped to listen. They did not understand the words, but they understood what they meant. Sari stood beside her grandfather and sang with him. Tears ran down her face, but she did not wipe them away. For the first time in her life, she was not afraid to be seen crying. Colonel Reyes walked through the field hospital at dawn, 2 days after liberation. 17 human soldiers had died in the initial assault. 43 more lay wounded. Some would recover fully. Others would carry scars for the rest of their lives. She stopped at each bed, spoke with each soldier, learned their names, remembered their faces. Later, alone in her command tent, she recorded messages for the families of the dead. She told them their sons and daughters had died bravely, that their sacrifice had meaning, that 200,000 people were free because of what they had given. She did not tell them that the Galactic Covenant would condemn this action, that politicians back on Earth were already calling it unauthorized, that she might face court-martial when she returned home. It did not matter. She had seen the processing facilities, the mass graves behind District 4, the medical experiments in District 12. She had seen what the Drenic did to people they considered livestock. Some things were worth the cost. Across the district, Sari worked alongside human engineers who were repairing the water systems. The Drenic had let everything fall apart. Clean water, sanitation, medical facilities, all had been allowed to decay because slaves did not deserve better. The humans fixed everything they could find. Sari found herself assigned to help a young engineer named Priya. She had dark hair and quick hands and laughed easily, even when the work was hard. Hold this steady, Priya said, handing Sari a piece of pipe. I need to seal the connection. Sari held it while Priya worked. After a moment, she asked the question that had been burning in her mind for 2 days. Why did you come? Priya looked up, confused. What do you mean? Why do humans come here? We are nothing to you. We have no resources, no technology, nothing to offer. The Drenic are powerful. The Galactic Covenant does not support you. Why risk so much for strangers? Priya was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled in a way that made Sari's feathers ruffle with confusion. Because you needed help, Priya said simply. Why wouldn't we come? Sari did not have an answer for that. That evening, a Covenant diplomatic vessel arrived in orbit. The ambassador, a crystalline being that shifted colors as it spoke, demanded a meeting with Colonel Reyes. The meeting took place in the command center. Sari was there as a translator, standing quietly in the corner. This action is unauthorized, the ambassador said. Its voice was like wind through glass. You have violated 17 Covenant protocols. You have disrupted established relationships with the Drenic hegemony. You have endangered the peace of this sector. Reyes listened without expression. Then she activated a display screen. Images appeared. The processing facilities. The mass graves. Bodies stacked like firewood. Children with brands burned into their flesh. Medical experiments that made even the ambassador's crystalline form flicker with discomfort. This is what your established relationships protected, Reyes said. This is what your peace allowed. 3 generations of suffering because the Covenant found it more convenient to look away. These are internal Drenic matters. The Covenant cannot intervene, and the Covenant chose not to intervene. There's a difference. We chose differently. The ambassador's colors shifted rapidly. The Drenic will not accept this. They will retaliate. The Covenant cannot protect you if you insist on this course. Reyes smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Then I suggest you stay out of our way. After the ambassador left, Sergeant Okonkwo found Sari still standing in the corner. He gestured for her to follow him outside. They sat together near one of the food distribution points. Human soldiers and Ret Hani workers moved around them, the two groups slowly learning to exist in the same space. Your Kavitha's granddaughter, Okonkwo said, the one who sings the old songs. Sari nodded, surprised he knew. I sat with him last night, shared a meal. He told me about you, about how you never stopped believing, even when everyone else did. I stopped believing many times, Sari admitted, but you kept looking up. That's what matters. He pulled out a translation device so they could speak more easily. Then he told her a story. He told her about growing up in a place called the African Union, about war and displacement and refugee camps, about being a child watching everything burn. Foreign soldiers came to protect my village, he said. I was 7 years old. I remember thinking they looked like giants, like gods come down from somewhere better. He paused. They weren't gods, just people, but they saved my life, and my mother's life, and my sister's. So you became a soldier, Sari said quietly, to save others the way you were saved. Yes. Okonkwo looked up at the sky, at the human ships still visible in orbit. Someone came for me once. I swore I would become that someone for others. Sari felt something shift in her chest. The small flame that had always burned there grew a little brighter. Thank you, she said. The words felt inadequate, but Okonkwo seemed to understand. They sat together in comfortable silence until a message came through on Okonkwo's communicator. His expression darkened. What is it? Sari asked. The Drenic are sending a fleet. 30 warships. They'll be here in 6 days. The peace had been temporary. The fight was not over. What will you do? Sari asked. Okonkwo stood up, checking his weapon. What we always do. We'll stay. We'll fight. And we'll protect you, even if it means dying. He looked at her with those strange human eyes. We didn't come this far to abandon you now. 6 days passed like a hell breath. The humans dug in. They built defensive positions around every processing district. They set up anti-air batteries and shield generators. They prepared shelters for the Ret Hani population, deep bunkers that could survive orbital bombardment. And they taught, not combat. The humans did not expect the Ret Hani to fight. 3 generations of slavery had taken that from them. But they taught survival, how to evacuate quickly, how to find shelter, how to stay calm when the world was falling apart. Sari volunteered for everything. She helped dig trenches. She carried supplies. She translated between humans and Red Hani when the devices failed. On the fourth day, Colonel Reyes assigned her to Private Linnea, Strand's communication team. Strand was the young female Sari had seen in the barracks during the first battle, the one who had removed her helmet and shared her food with children. I need someone who knows this district, Strand explained. Someone who can guide us if the fighting moves into areas our maps don't cover. I know every corner of this place, Sari said. I was born here. Good. Then stay close to me. They worked together through the remaining days. Strand was young for a human soldier, barely older than Sari herself. She talked about her home, a cold place called Sweden where the sun barely rose in winter. She talked about her family, her training, her fear of failing. Are you afraid? Sari asked on the fifth night. They sat on the roof of a defensive position, watching the stars. Strand was quiet for a moment. Yes, I am terrified. But you stay. I have to. Strand looked at her with those strange blue eyes. There's a saying where I come from. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding something else is more important than fear. What is more important? Strand gestured at the district below them, at the Red Hani families preparing shelters, at the children who had started smiling again. They are. On the morning of the sixth day, the Drenic fleet arrived. 30 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. They were massive, dark, and angular, bristling with weapons. Against them, the human fleet was tiny. 12 ships. For destroyers, 6 frigates, 2 support vessels. Warlord Dresh commanded the Drenic force. He broadcast his demands across every frequency. Umans, you have trespassed on hegemony territory. You have destroyed hegemony property. You have murdered hegemony citizens. Surrender the slaves and depart, and we will allow you to live. Resist, and we will annihilate you. You have 1 hour to decide. In the command center, Colonel Reyes listened to the message with her officers gathered around her. The odds were impossible. Everyone knew it. What do we do? Someone asked. Reyes picked up her communicator and opened a channel to the Drenic fleet. Her voice was calm. Steady. Final. Come and take them. The Battle of Sovun 3 began. In orbit, the human ships formed a defensive formation around the planet. They knew they could not win a straight fight, but they did not need to win. They needed to delay, to buy time. The Drenic attacked in waves. Their ships outnumbered and outgunned the human fleet. They expected an easy victory. They did not get one. The human ships fought with a ferocity that shocked the Drenic commanders. They used the planet's gravity well to mask their movements. They targeted engines and weapons instead of going for kills. They made the Drenic pay for every meter of space. Hours passed. Human ships took damage. 2 frigates were disabled early in the fighting. A destroyer lost half its weapons. But they held the line. On the ground, Sari huddled in shelter with dozens of other Red Hani. The sounds of orbital combat reached them as distant thunder. Strand stayed with them, monitoring communications, relaying information. They're holding, Strand said. Our ships are holding. Then the message came that changed everything. A Drenic cruiser had broken through the defensive line. It was heading for the largest population center, District 7. Sari's district. The shelters would not survive a direct orbital strike. 2 human frigates moved to intercept. The cruiser was 3 times their size, armed with weapons that could crack continents. Who commands those ships? Someone asked over the communication channel. Captain Rivera on the Steadfast. Captain Yun on the Defiant. Sari watched Strand's face go pale as she listened to the next transmission. It was Captain Rivera's voice. Calm. Clear. Final. All hands, this is the captain. Damage control teams to stations. Engineering, I need everything you've got. We're going to stop that cruiser or die trying. A pause. Then, it's been an honor serving with you all. The 2 frigates accelerated toward the cruiser. They would not survive the engagement. Everyone knew it. The captains knew it. The crews knew it. They went anyway. Strand turned off the external speaker. She did not want the Red Hani to hear what came next. But Sari saw her face, saw the tears she tried to hide. They're dying for us, Sari whispered. Humans are dying. For us. Strand nodded. Her voice cracked when she spoke. That's what we do. We protect people, even when it costs us everything. Above the planet, two small ships charged toward Monster, and the people below could only watch the sky and pray to gods they had stopped believing in. The Steadfast hit the Drennic cruiser like a fist. Captain Rivera drove her ship into the enemy vessel at full speed, weapons firing until the moment of impact. The collision tore through the cruiser's weapons array, crippling its ability to bombard the surface. The Steadfast broke apart. Escape pods launched, but not many. Not enough. Captain Rivera's final transmission reached the surface before the static claimed her voice. Ground forces, you're clear. Give them hell. The Defiant pulled away, badly damaged but still fighting. Captain Yin continued to harass the crippled cruiser, keeping its attention away from the planet while rescue shuttles raced to collect survivors from the Steadfast wreckage. On the ground, the real battle began. Drennic landing craft descended through the atmosphere. Hundreds of soldiers poured onto the surface, determined to reclaim their property. They attacked every district at once, spreading the human defenders thin. Sergeant Okonkwo led the defense of the main shelter in District 7. 300 Red Hani children huddled inside. If the Drennic reached them, there would be no mercy. Hold the line, Okonkwo shouted. His squad dug in around the shelter entrance. Nothing gets through. Nothing. The Drennic came in waves. They had numbers on their side. They had rage. They had the fury of conquerors denied their conquest. But the humans had something else. Okonkwo took a wound in the first hour, a plasma burn across his shoulder that should have put him down. He kept fighting. When his rifle overheated, he drew his sidearm. When his sidearm ran dry, he picked up a Drennic weapon and kept shooting. Sergeant, you need medical attention, one of his soldiers shouted. Okonkwo replied. After they're safe. Across the district, Sari found herself in the middle of the fighting. A squad of Drennic soldiers attacked the communication post where she and Strand were stationed. They came through the walls, weapons blazing. Human soldiers fell around them. Strand took a hit to the leg. She went down, still firing, but unable to move. The Drennic advanced. Sari looked at the weapon that had fallen from a dead human soldier's hands. She had never held a weapon before. She did not know how to use it. She picked it up anyway. She stood over Strand's body and raised the rifle at the approaching Drennic. Her hands shook. Her hearts pounded so hard she thought they might burst. Sari, run. Strand shouted. Get out of here. Sari did not run. She had run her whole life. From guards, from punishment, from hope itself. She had kept her head down and survived the way Pole told her to survive. Not anymore. The Drennic leading the squad paused. He stared at her, this small, feathered creature holding a human weapon, standing between him and his target. A slave refusing to submit. That pause was all she needed. Human reinforcements burst through the opposite wall. They cut down the Drennic squad in seconds. One of them, a medic, rushed to Strand's side while others secured the room. You saved my life, Strand said, looking up at Sari with wide eyes. Sari lowered the weapon. Her hands were still shaking. You saved mine first. Above the planet, the tide turned. Ships from the 12th Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They had violated direct orders to stay out of Drennic space. They had come anyway. 15 fresh human warships slammed into the Drennic formation from behind. Warlord Dresh tried to regroup to form a defensive formation to retreat. He never made it. The battle ended within the hour. The Drennic fleet was destroyed or captured. Dresh himself died when his flagship's reactor overloaded, taking a dozen human missiles with it. On the ground, the surviving Drennic soldiers surrendered. Colonel Reyes accepted their surrender personally. She looked at the creatures who had enslaved an entire species for 3 generations, who had worked millions to death, who had treated people like livestock. Take them to the Red Hani Council of Elders, she said. Let them decide what justice looks like. The elders gathered in what had been the Drennic Command Center. They looked at the prisoners before them, pathetic now, stripped of weapons and power. Just frightened creatures waiting to learn their fate. Elder Kavith spoke first. He was still weak, still dying, but his voice carried. Many of you want vengeance. I understand. They took everything from us. Our freedom, our families, our future. They deserve to suffer as we suffered. The other elders murmured agreement. Kavith raised his hand for silence. But if we become them, they win. If we torture and murder as they did, we prove they were right about us. That we are animals. That we deserve nothing better. He looked at the Drenic prisoners. They flinched from his gaze. Trial, Kavith said. Justice, not vengeance. We will show the galaxy what the Rethani truly are. Not slaves. Not animals. People. Better people than they ever believed we could be. The vote was close. But Kavith's words carried the day. The Drenic would face trial. They would face justice. But not the cruel, mindless revenge they had dealt to others for generations. 3 weeks later, the human forces prepared to depart. They left behind advisors, equipment, supplies, everything the Rethani would need to rebuild. They left behind promises of support and protection. They left behind hope. Sari stood with Strand at the spaceport, watching human shuttles carry soldiers back to their ships. Will I see you again? Sari asked. Strand smiled. Maybe. The galaxy is big, but it keeps getting smaller. She pulled something from her pocket, a small medallion bearing the symbol of the 44th Orbital Drop Battalion. Keep this, so you remember. I will never forget. None of us will. They embraced, human and Rethani, two people from worlds that had never known each other existed until war brought them together. That evening, Elder Kavith gathered the children of District 7. He was weaker now. His time was running out. But he had one more gift to give. He taught them the old hymn, the forbidden song about starwalkers who came from distant worlds to bring light to dark places. But the song had a new verse now, written by Kavith himself in the weeks since liberation. It spoke of beings from a harsh world called Earth. Beings who crossed the void, not for conquest or profit, but because someone needed help. Beings who gave their lives for strangers. The children sang it loudly, their voices rising into the evening air. Sari stood at the back of the gathering, listening. Tears ran down her face, but she did not wipe them away. Her grandfather found her eyes in the crowd. He smiled, weak, fading but real. You were right, little one, he said. Hope did not die first. It just learned to wait. Above them, the last human ships climbed toward the stars, and the Rethani sang their freedom into the sky.